Welcome to From Head to Heart and Home. We're happy that you're here today to listen to our conversation. This is a channel created by women, empowering women to take intentional action in creating the life that they want, with your hosts, Carla Center, subconscious healer, and myself, Shanda Soretti, certified coach. So today, Carla and I have a wonderful topic that we're going to dive into and see where it leads us. And today is all around stepping through fear. So I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Carla and let her run with the wind.
Thank you. So today we're talking about stepping through fear. I want you all to think about something that you really want to do or you really wanted to do, and you let all these different things that could happen get in your way of doing that. So that's what we're talking about. So when you step through fear, that means even if it scares you, you step forward and make the inspired action steps and find out what's on the other side. Because we all can find a million reasons why not to do it. And we may not realize that it's fear because we have, well, this could happen, that could happen. Oh, I really don't want to deal with this. There's all kinds of excuses. So, stepping through fear and finding out what's on the other side of this. And I have clients all the time, they're like, but, and if you use but, there's something behind that. There's something that's holding you back. And so I would say, think about what would happen if I thought, what else is possible besides all of the different scenarios that you're creating in your head? What could I create if I just thought, what else is possible?
Yeah, I think that question, what else is possible, is a very useful, supportive, and beautiful question to ask. And like Carla said, when you find yourself trying to justify your excuses or your reasons, or you feel the need to defend something, that is an opportunity to get curious. What's underneath of that? Why do you feel like you need to defend or justify? Right? Because that's how we get into that convincing energy. And when we're in convincing energy, we have an agenda, right? So um my belief around, you know, stepping through fear, or acting even though fear is there, is that instead of letting it be the reason why we don't do the things, let's try and reframe it to be the fuel to do the things that kind of scare us or make us feel nervous or uncertain, even because, again, like you've heard us say in the past, that is where your growth awaits. It's in those moments of taking the leap of faith, trusting yourself, knowing that you'll figure it out, being resourceful, and just kind of like allowing yourself to just try, right? So let's reframe it. So instead of fear being the reason why we stop or don't do something, fear's the reason why we do, right? So it's like, if fear is the marker of your boundary or your comfort zone, fear, once you hit fear, you're at the edge of that comfort zone, then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm right on the precipice of growth. Like I'm right there, right? And just to share a distinction too, we're not talking about like if you're fearful for your life or something like that. Like we're not talking about that type of fear where it's actually dangerous or harmful. We're talking about the emotion that we feel, the sensation that we feel in our body of fear. So that might look a little bit different for everybody, but fear is the opportunity that's waiting for you for your growth.
Right, right. And we can spend just as much energy staying in our comfort zone, staying in the excuses as we spend going forward and trying something new. And if you look at the people that you look up to and you look at the things they've accomplished, they have had to step through fear. I've never seen anybody that's accomplished big things that did not have to step through fear. They are not fearless. they just choose to step forward and not let that hold them back.
Yeah. Fear is definitely a requirement for growth because we're obviously going to feel fear or anticipation or anxiety around things we aren't certain of. And really, we're uncertain of anything we've never experienced,
Right.
right? So fear is going to be there. But like Carla said, it's not necessarily somebody's become fearless. It's that they're willing to proceed even though fear is there. They don't allow fear to be the reason why they don't do it. They say, okay, fear's here, let's go. You got shotgun, let's go. Right?
Right. And that can move towards all kinds of things. It can move, it could be your career, it could be in your relationships. Being honest with yourself on what do I really want in my relationships instead of, okay, what have I always done? What has always happened, so that you stay in those cycles that we talk about often, Shanda and I do. What else is possible in my relationship? What different things can I do, say, be, all of it, to create something that I would love even more than what I have now?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like we're coming up on all the holidays. What else is possible? Because a lot of people, there's drama in the whole holiday season. What else is possible if I step through the fear and communicate with somebody about something, or communicate with somebody in a different way?
Yes. Yeah. And I love, again, I'm just loving this question, what else is possible? Because it's like, all right, if we could for a second, let's just play a little game here, right? And say, okay, let's say you're coming up to a situation and you have fear present. It's like, all right, what if you could just for a moment put the fear aside, not pretend it's not there or ignore it or whatever, but let's just put it aside for a second. We can do that. We can compartmentalize and put it over here for a moment, and then ask the question, what else might be possible if fear wasn't present or fear wasn't the driving force behind my choice? Because like Carl and I always talk about, you're always making choices. You're doing a choice for yes, a choice for no, or a choice for I don't know, which is that indecision, right? So we're always choosing. Just like we're always manifesting, we're manifesting or counter manifesting, but we're always creating. So we're always choosing. And I think being able to ask that question, what else could be possible? What else might be possible if fear was not the emotion driving my actions or driving my choices? And then see what comes out. You might be quite surprised. So I'll even share, and Carla knows this because I reached out to her about it. I decided to follow my heart the other day and create an initiative, and I got all excited and I went for my walk in the morning and all these things just came to me, and I got home and I couldn't write them down fast enough, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I have this brilliant idea." And I shared it with Carla and she was like, "This is great." And then I was like, "If I don't take inspired action right now, I will talk myself out of doing it because I didn't necessarily have the whole idea written down and planned. I didn't know every step. I didn't know how. I was just like, I have to do this." And so I told her so that she would hold me accountable, so that I would do it, so that she would know how important this thing was to me, and hold my feet to the fire. So I'm glad that I did that, because she was like, "Oh my gosh, like do it, do it, do it." So I did. And immediately I even told her, I think I said, I felt like I wanted to vomit. But I still did it. So fear was there. Like I felt the butterflies in my stomach. I felt the anxiety like in my chest. I felt the confusion in my brain, but I also felt the connection in my heart. And so, out of all of the things that were happening in my body, I chose to focus on the one thing that would drive me forward. And that was what I felt in my heart. It was the original spark that I felt from the idea itself. And I was like, no, I understand confusion's there. I understand anxiety's there. And I understand fear's there, but that is not the driving force of why you thought of this idea in the first place. Now let's go create it. So I did. So that's just a prime example of moving through the fear.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And and you're going to make this amazing, beautiful impact on the world because you're making that choice. Whereas you could have just stayed where you are.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing I want to say is indecision is a decision, and it is the not taking responsibility for your choices. If I don't make a choice, life happens to me and it's not my fault,
Mm.
but it is still a choice and you're still responsible no matter what happens. And it can take us into victim mode. And Chanda and I have talked about that plenty, about being in victim mode. And, I have the same things. I stepped away from doing what, being paid to do social work. And I just did call center work and I did office work. And then I started doing the energy work I do and the subconscious healing. And I was just doing it on the side. And I decided to it terrified me to just quit my job 2 years ago and do it full time because I knew, by the way, I was still doing it for free for everybody because that's just who I am. That's part, I knew that this is part of who I am, but it scared me to death to be dependent on me and not somebody else.
Mm. Yeah, I love what you're sharing about indecision, because indecision is a decision, and indecision can be temporary or it can be long term. So I call it the miserable land of maybe, right? It's that place where it feels awful, and here's why. And I learned this, and I think this is a really beautiful thing that I learned a couple of years ago around indecision. If we're choosing to live in indecision, we're constantly spending energy and thought on whatever that decision is that we're not choosing yes or no toward, right? So there's constant weighing of, calculating, thinking about whatever, right? Energy is being put out to that thing, whether it's daily or not. It's always being put out. When you make a decision, choosing yes or no, that contemplation, that weighing stops. So you free yourself from being stuck in that tug of war back and forth. And the other thing, and I say this to clients all the time too, even somebody who's thinking of working with me and they don't know if it's a yes or no for them, they have to think about it or whatever. I always tell them, you do not have to make a yes or no forever, right? You can decide yes or you can decide no, and you can change your mind on anything, and that's okay, right? Like we can say no, not right now. We can say yes right now, but as long as you make that choice, you're freeing yourself, right? So, and if you've ever experienced it, which if you're human, you have, the feeling of being in indecision feels awful. It feels awful because no matter what you're trying to figure out, it's exhausting. It's like it wastes so much mind power. Think of where you could refocus, reallocate that energy if you could just make a decision. Again, even if it's just a temporary decision. Like if it's that big of a decision where you're like, I don't know in the moment, that's when you say not right now, right? And that's fine. Not right now. Not right now doesn't mean forever. And if it does turn out to be forever, that's okay too. So allowing, again, your body to help you choose what's right for you. Like I got to do with my initiative. There was a whole bunch of things slewing around in there, but I decided to hold on to the spark that created the whole thing from the beginning, as opposed to the anxiety, the overwhelm, the fear, right? So, I think it's really cool to, um, distinguish or differentiate a willingness versus a readiness. And this is something that it has been, a theme with my clients lately and with the people I've been talking to on calls, is that oftentimes we confuse being ready or being willing with being ready. So
Mhm.
we're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not ready yet. So I'm not going to do that thing. And it's like, okay, you're not ready. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Right.
Because again, one of my biggest beliefs in any of this type of healing work and growth is that it is not so important to be ready for something, right? it is very important to be willing to try something.
Right.
So that is right now a big message on my heart that I get to speak a lot to. So release this need, because this is all fear based, right? We need to be ready. I'm afraid, so I need to be ready first. It's like, what if you don't need to be ready at all? What
Right.
if you just need to be willing? I love
Right.
that.
Be willing and make that I had the word. Come back. So, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about, so when we are not wanting to make a choice either way, it's that fear of making a mistake. And
Right.
what if we took out that it's a mistake, because it really isn't? You're going to learn either way something. And you deeming it good or bad is really all within you,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes making a choice which you would think is a mistake shows you something that's even better than what you had thought was possible. Commitment was the word I was thinking of.
There you go.
Being ready and making that commitment to what you want to do. Like people buy programs, they do all kinds of stuff, or they even get books, or I mean, when January comes, people buy gym memberships,
Okay.
And you have the intention of doing something, but have you really made that commitment?
Mhm.
Even on the moments where it might not be simple, because you can make all the excuses for not going. I'm tired, I'm whatever. Making that, not being willing and making a commitment can take you in directions you never knew were possible,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah. Failing forward is something, is like a paradigm, right, in the realm of growth and opportunity. So when you can understand that there is no such thing as failure, because there's always something to be learned no matter what, I think it's a really beautiful thing. And then it removes the fear from that. It's like, oh, I don't have to be afraid to fail, because there's lessons in learning in my failure. This is how I get better. If you're not failing, you're not doing it right, right?
Right.
um this is reminding me of a story that I read with my son and read when I was a child as well. And you guys might know it, the BFG, right? In that story, the Big Friendly Giant, they talk. He has his own type of language, like he's not really well versed in the English language, and so he says, "Am I right or am I left?" So I'm like, why don't we adopt that thought when it comes to being right or wrong? It's not right or wrong, it's right or left. There's no other thing. It's not right or wrong. It's just right or left. And it kind of like, you might even smile when you think of it. Like, look at Carla right now, right? And look at myself.
Right.
So we're kind of lit up because it's silly and it's playful and it's fun. So that is another way that I actually like to not combat fear, because I don't feel like we should fight it, but I feel like we do actually need to do the opposite and embrace it and then allow it to be there and make it okay that it's there. So, like I've shared before, in my family and in my life, I've used and we use humor a lot to kind of um, allow us to receive and open up to things, even if we're having a hard time, or we're feeling fearful, or maybe a lot of resistance. By being a little playful, which is why I offered the right and left analogy, we will be more receptive and be more open to receiving whatever the information is that is wanting to be received by us.
Right, right. And I mean, when you just look back at yourself after you've made different choices and see how the year's gone, and just really like celebrate the changes and the growth in you, because you made the choice to like step forward instead of staying in the patterns that you got in the past. And there are reasons for our patterns. And that's one of the things where we're saying, let's not make things wrong. There's always reasons why we end up in a place. So if we realize that, okay, something got me here, and whatever it was, good, bad, indifferent, we don't have to judge it. I want to be here. And the steps between might not be comfortable the whole time, but this is where I want to be. And think of the joy that comes once you get there. And sometimes the scariest things at the end of it, um, like I was did zip lining. I was terrified. I'm afraid of
Uh,
heights. I
woo,
don't know if you
yeah.
remember that, Shanda, but I did it a year and a half ago. I went zip lining, terrified. But I thought, why don't I try it? And it was so exciting. And I loved every minute of it. Even though I'm afraid of heights, I'd look down, I'm like, oh no. But afterwards, I had a really great time doing it. And that's such a simple thing, but it was so scary. And then a different time in the same year, like I was going to do things that I was afraid of. I went climbing through volcanic caves that were lava tubes. And again, small spaces, no thank you. But I did it and it was so much fun. And but if I would have let fear both times be like, oh nope, I can't do this, I would have missed out on such an adventure both times.
Mm,
And there's little things in our lives. It doesn't have to just be like what I'm just saying, but they're just examples. Like you, every part of your life has these moments of fear that we allow to keep us where we don't want to be because it's more comfortable to not step into the next part.
yeah, absolutely. It's like that's that complacency, right? Um, and the comfort thing, it's like comfort. So if we're not feeling discomfort, we're not growing, right? And then that's where just complacency comes from. But it's you have to think about what do you want in the end? What is the long-term goal? Because if you can stay focused on what the long-term goal is, it makes that temporary discomfort worth it for that long-term gain. Like, I'm just going to make this up, but let's just say you hired a coach. Maybe you worked with Carla or I, and maybe you signed up for 6 months or a year, and you're like, okay, I am going all in on this. I'm willing. Hmm, not ready. I'm willing to feel discomfort for the next 6 months to a year because I know after that's done, that discomfort at that level will no longer be there. You will dissolve that level of discomfort because you're rising up to the next. So always be thinking that short term discomfort for the long term gain. It's like people who go to the gym all the time. Hello, that is it. They're like, okay, I might not enjoy it, or maybe I love it, but maybe it hurts or whatever. But they're thinking what they want in the end. Same with people who eat really healthily and they nourish their body. They're not thinking of, oh, I want that chocolate bar right now. No, they're like, sure, I want the chocolate bar, but I know that that's not going to get me to my long term goal.
Right.
So I'm willing to feel, I don't get to have chocolate bar for the health that they want later on, right?
Right.
And talking about fear, it's like when you see fear, when you feel fear, run dot
Right.
dot dot toward it. Like run right toward it. Like Carla was saying, she's like, I hate heights, right? And I can totally second that one. But she said, I am willing to put myself in this experience because I know it's safe and I'm sure it's going to be fun. And what was the result on the other end of it? Fun.
Yeah.
You're proud of yourself. It felt really good. It was exciting. It was all the things, right? So again, I keep coming back to when you are feeling fearful of something, an experience. Again, that's not life, jeopardizing or anything like that.
Right.
But it's telling you, it's information. Everything is information, guys. It's telling you that you're on the precipice of growth. Like, I think that is freaking beautiful. How wonderful that we get these loud, clear messages of, hey, hello, you're about to experience some growth right now if you're
Right.
willing to go through with this thing. How cool is that?
Right. And when we're kids, we actually more embrace it. We get
Uh,
excited about those things, which the physiological effects on your body with excitement and
yeah.
the fear, the fight or flight are very similar. So
Yep.
sometimes, by the way, you guys, you might just be excited, but
Mhm.
you're like, you don't realize it because you're like, ooh, ooh, this is what, like when something scares me, like
Yep.
something bad that's happened. So you're like, no, your heart races.
Yep. Yeah.
But and the end result is just something you didn't even ever know was possible for you. You know, the in between is not always as difficult as we think it is going to be, and we see that there's something that we didn't even know was going to happen. And like when I quit my job 2 years ago, I certainly didn't know that one of my closest friends was going to be on the east coast of Canada.
Ah,
You know what I mean? It's
she's talking about me, everybody.
but and the connection that we have would have never been possible had somebody not figured out computers and Zoom and all of those things. And those people all step through fear too, by the way. As we step through fear, things advance
Yeah.
for all around us.
Yeah. Yeah. What you said, I didn't like when we hear people say, I didn't think it would be that easy. I hear that oftentimes from clients. Okay. Do not get me wrong. There are moments of a lot of efforting and discomfort happens. But every client that I have worked with comes out on the other end, and even during the process saying, I didn't know it was going to be this easy. We always fantasize and catastrophize that doing these big things is going to be so hard, healing is going to be so hard. And I'm not saying that it's not, but I am saying it's not always so hard or so big. There are moments, but again, they're moments and they pass, right?
Right. And as you see those moments, like Shanda was saying, you can make it some big, huge, hard thing in your mind. And there are moments in there that you're like, that was so super simple. I had no idea. And somebody can explain stuff to you. And then you're like, oh, I don't think I can do that. And then you go in and you're like, wow, for me, it came so much easier than I ever thought it would
Yeah.
because I had told myself that sounds hard.
Yeah. And the thing that I just wrote down was those hard moments that we experience. So if the journey, let's just say the journey's 50-50, half of it's hard, half of it's not, right? Surprisingly not. So you experience the relief of, oh, wow, that was easy. But even in those hard moments, you experience ahas. Holy cow, I never knew this. Oh my gosh, I just learned something huge. And so on and so forth. Like, it's like the hard moments lead to the ahas, which lead you to the next step,
Right.
right? So it's like those breadcrumbs. And we always talk about that, like follow those breadcrumbs. You guys, the information, everything we need is there. It's all right in front of us. It's so fascinating. And the more work that I do with clients and the deeper that we get to go, the more amazed and in love and on fire for this type of work that I become. Because I'm like our lives are literally designed to work for us. Like it's when we're willing to look up and look around for those signs and clues and insights, they're there waiting. Oh my gosh, I had a client share the most beautiful analogy with me today. Do you mind if I share it?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. She was saying how she's been on this journey for years and years and years, and it's been very difficult. And she always felt like she wasn't really getting anywhere. She wasn't really getting any traction. And we've only been working together for a month. And she says, like, I feel like I'm finally making traction. When we were talking about trust, which is beautiful because fear, trust, kind of go hand in hand there. And she was saying that she lacks a lot of trust. So we dove into that, and what she found out, she's like, do I trust myself? She's like, well, I trust myself to drive the car, right? Like to be the driver of the car, but I don't trust myself when I'm on the road. And I was like, ooh. And so we kind of created this analogy together. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally get what you're saying. So what we ended up finding was that she might trust herself in the car, but she doesn't trust herself driving down the road because she can't read the signs. So picture this, picture driving a car, not knowing what a stop sign is or red light or a yield or a merge or no right turn, no left turn. Imagine not being able to read any of the signs out there. How freaking scary would that be? So that was her experience before working with me. And now she's like, I'm starting to be able to read those signs, right? There, and I said, that's all it takes is this continuous work of one by one unraveling. I was talking about the threads, like what we weave, like if our life is a woven piece of fabric. I said, we're working together on the levels of habits, beliefs, and identity. Think of all of the years, which is your accumulation of however old you are. I'm like, think of all of the years that it took to weave your fabric, all of the fibers and the strands individually. I said, we are unweaving this tapestry so that we can take out the pieces, heal the pieces, move the pieces to where they belong. So when we reweave the tapestry, it's in alignment the way you are supposed to be, or you're meant to be, not supposed to. And I just thought it was such a beautiful thing. And I appreciate you guys for listening to my stories. But I just think it's so beautiful because it's like we might not know the end. We might not be able to see every step of the way, but it's like trusting. And that's why finding a mentor, and it could be Carla and I, it could be somebody else, but finding a mentor where you feel safe and seen and heard, and you trust that person to be able to guide you so that you can go from a place of feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't read any of these signs, to holy cow, that's a stop sign. I got it. I can read that now. Right. Yeah.
Right. And along the way, not looking at somebody else's like, oh, but they can read the sign, so that makes me less than. Um, because there will be my fabric, Shanda's fabric, your fabric, it's all different. And that's not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing. It made me think. I took my youngest child for their first driving lesson the other day.
Yes.
And my kid goes, did I do okay? And it was jerky. And I said, only at first. This kid could back out of a parking place, there was all kinds of stuff that I was super proud of, but that's not what my kid was looking at. And that's how we can be. So that's one of the reasons why I have a mentor, because we're going to point out the things instead of you getting stuck with, I'm comparing myself to somebody else. That's part of that fear stuff. Like Shanda's client, how beautiful. I'm starting to read the signs instead of, I read some signs, but look at what everybody else can do. Don't do that when you're doing this stepping through fear. Do not compare yourself to somebody else, because your journey is your journey and it's going to be different than other people's. And celebrate those movements. I mean, that's beautiful to unpack like Shanda and the client did is a beautiful thing. Her making the visual, and then I mean, it's just a great thing. So if you think about what's holding you in your space, what is, like Shanda said in the beginning, what's underneath that, and know that whatever you find is not going to make you, oh, I'm a bad person because I'm letting this hold me back.
Yeah.
Because that's not the point. The point is to be like, okay, what is it? What am I allowing to get in the way of me moving towards what I want?
Yeah. Yeah. And Carla, what you're bringing up for me now is you kind of touched on it earlier too, is like, we are all allowed to put our own personal interpretation on the things that we are taking in and learning. So even like I assign action steps and homework and stuff like that, and even in these recordings, you and I sometimes would give like action steps for people to do. I always encourage everybody to put your own personal spin on it, right? If a client comes back to me and says, I don't know if I did my homework right, I'm like, you did it exactly how you were supposed to do it, right? Because it's like we get to just release the reins of the control and needing to know all the things and allow our intuition to guide us, as opposed to like the death grip on like the process. We talked about this in a previous episode. And the other thing that I wanted to add, and you had mentioned it again about like mentorship, right? It's like finding that mentor that you feel safe and trust and can trust in, and believe in. But even more than, not even more, just the same, sorry, than mentors, it's important to surround ourselves with friends who also have the same understanding, right? I'm not saying everything has to be in a complete alignment where you have to be the same person, but surround yourself with people who know what you're going through and share what you're going through, because all of this put together, like mentorship, friends, sharing, all leads to a support team,
Yes.
right? And we need, I don't usually like using that word need, we need support when we're going through this journey, right? Find an online group. Carl and I both have one. Find an email list, find a podcast. You know, hopefully this YouTube channel that we've created is that for you. If it's not, go find something where you feel supported, right? A place where you can contribute and add to and learn and grow. I think it is so powerful to be able to give yourself that opportunity, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And learn and grow are two of the key things, because don't go looking for somebody that will support you being right.
Mm.
Because if you're looking to be right, there's no growth in that. There's not. Shanda and I challenge each other all the time. That's one of the beautiful things. We don't just support each other, but we challenge each other. That's why she told me about her project, because she knew if she didn't step into it, I would say, "Hey, how's that project going?"
Right. Yeah.
And I do ask her about it, not to keep her accountable, but because I'm interested and I'm excited, like she's making a difference in other people's lives. And that's what you want. You want somebody that's supportive and will ask you things. And then you're like, okay, I'm sharing this with them. And what are my next steps that I can share with them? Where am I going? It's being
Mm.
on a journey with other people. The
Yeah.
group, the group, when they support you, they're kind of, you'll feel like they're on the journey with you, because they're there with you. They're supporting you. They're not there to validate anything about you, but to support you and love you as you grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the accountability piece I think is super important too, right? Support is definitely one piece. Accountability is a whole nother piece too. Because think of it, if I'll just use my example because that's what we're talking about, but if I hadn't reached out to Carla and been willing to be vulnerable and share this idea, even though she could have been like, that is ridiculous. She'd probably never say that, but she could have, right? I put myself out there. If I wasn't willing, notice how I keep saying willing to share with her, this could have been the result. I would have been able to weasel out of it without anybody ever knowing the difference. I would have been able to weasel out of helping people. That doesn't even make sense. I would have been able to weasel out of my hopes, my dreams, my passion, my inspiration. What? Like, it's okay to feel fear. It's okay to be scared. I was like I said, I was like, I think I'm going to throw up. And she laughed because it was funny, right? Because I was like, I want to do this so bad, but yet I'm like almost crippled with this feeling. And I just did it anyway,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yeah.
results and the feedback and what I'm creating is so worth that 15 seconds of, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to puke. Literally, guys, 15 seconds and it was gone.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And it's a reward for being vulnerable. And that's why I'm talking about, don't go in looking to be right. Be vulnerable. Be your authentic self,
Yeah.
because vulnerability is part of that scary thing. And that's how you learn so much about yourself and
Yeah.
others when you're vulnerable like that.
Yeah. I was laughing because when you said if you need to be right, I'm like, again, if you feel like you need to be right, be left. All right.
Yes.
Just be
Yes.
left.
Just be left. My boyfriend's left-handed. He always says I'm always the only one in my right mind, because it's cross, and it's the truth. Like, we're always like, I need to, because if we want to be right, we are going to gather information to prove our point,
Oh,
instead of being open to what else is possible.
yeah. Yeah. And, even when we have these beautiful ideas, you literally have no idea where it's going to go or how it can take off and how it will come to life. But to watch it come to life is so exciting. And I'm sharing that like I'm in it right now. So this is truly from my heart, from exact experience right now. And it's so cool. So, um, being vulnerable, asking for help, throwing ideas out there, bouncing them off your friends and your colleagues, like do all of these things. And when you feel fear, do that thing. Do that thing.
Well, and somebody in your circle might have a skill that you need that you didn't even know they had.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they can support you through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this is just such a beautiful, beautiful, loaded. I'm like, I feel like this is a smorgasbord buffet of like just complete goodness when it comes to fear.
Yeah.
Fear is the platter, and we're just serving everything off of that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of keeping it all encased in a
Uh,
fear box.
yeah. So, out of curiosity, Carla, do you have anything else that you would like to add to the conversation, or, one last thing that you want to part by saying?
Um, I just want to say, as you step through fear, remember that you are making a choice to choose you instead of let something or someone else control your journey.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. What a beautiful, beautiful message. So, the last thing that I'll say is that when you want to be right, just be left. All right.
Uh,
So, thank you guys all for listening. Thank you for joining this conversation. Like always, if you guys have comments, if you want to share something with us, please let us know in the comments. We love hearing from you. Find us on social media, connect with us. So, thanks for tuning in to our channel From Head to Heart and Home with Carolyn and I. If you enjoyed our conversation, then make sure you click the subscribe button below so that you get the notifications and our weekly episodes. Okay. And be sure to join us next week for another connected, authentic conversation. Bye bye for now.